It's a huge privilege and pleasure to take on the ambassador role, and also to have this opportunity to link our work around sport, sporting values, sporting heritage, and the theme from this conference, which is the Wellbeing Agenda. So I wanted to start by giving you a whistle-top tour around Parkhouse School, which is in Newbury. I'd like you to look out for the clues that suggest that we do place a huge emphasis on sport, its history and its values. So, Parkhouse School, mid-Victorian country house with a 60s, 70s, 80s sprawl all around it, but hopefully you picked up from the quick video the emphasis on the Olympic values. Textiles project in Year 7, running down the main corridor, the celebration of our students' work internationally, and the Olympic and Paralympic stained glass window as you enter the school. So we're a completely open accessed, mixed community school, 1,200 students on roll. I've been the head teacher there 17 years. I don't make that point about the top 100 state schools in the country for any praise or recognition, other than the fact I genuinely believe that the progress, the attitudes of our young people, their success comes from that emphasis on sport, sporting values and high performance, and the sense of teamwork that comes out of all of that engagement. So just a little bit of context then about those values. We were one of the founder Get Set schools, one of the first 12 schools. Eventually there were over 20,000 Get Set schools in the UK. That was the official Olympic and Paralympic education programme from 2012, emphasising those individual values. Now, if I was going to set up a school from scratch, pretty much I'd be saying that's what I would want our community to stand for. We adopted those values as our values at Parkhouse School, and we were the first school in the UK to receive the Inspired by 2012 mark from the Cabinet Office, reflecting our commitment to those values taken from the Olympics and Paralympics to drive our community, to drive our school, to drive our young pupils' attitudes and achievements. Some context briefly about me. It's amazing the damage that 20 years of secondary headship can do, isn't it? That attractive figure there, that hirsute figure, is me, circa 1980 at the Southern Boys Cross Country Championship. I joined Reading Athletic Club as a 13-year-old and was always excited and passionate about the whole culture and context of the club. Perhaps I was destined to be a history teacher, which is actually what I was once upon a time. What that crop photo doesn't show is that the English school's 800-metre champion is about to fly past me on the other side, just into the home straight. But my passion and my vision, and I think for schools, goes back to my experience as a student, where I saw the value of sport and sporting engagement and an understanding of the context for sport in school and more widely in shaping my later values and vision as a teacher and ultimately a school leader. So going on to the main themes of what I want to pick up on, I think sporting heritage, the associated values, provide a framework for linking into the wellbeing themes that the conference as a whole is going to consider. Firstly, a cohesive and a vibrant community. If your values and your vision for the school isn't there as the foundation, you aren't going to build anything else. And that's critical to what we set out to do. Because from that, I believe through a positive approach, a vibrant approach to learning, you promote equality, you build a healthier community, and crucially make a link between mental and physical well-being. And very specifically, we've done a lot of work around global awareness through international links with schools that are themed around those values and sporting activity, context and culture. So a little bit, I think, now on each one of those, just to illustrate the approach. So if we're talking about developing a cohesive and vibrant community, what of the sporting values and sporting heritage done in that context. It is about how you shape your school's vision and ethos as the bedrock of everything that you do. So we communicate through the prospectus what we stand for as a school in relation to those values. All of our communication strategy is built around what we stand for as a school based upon those core values of the Olympic and Paralympic movement. Our weekly, it's not quite weekly, our termly magazine is entitled Personal Best, and it celebrates students' achievements in the context of those values. The students write most of the articles there, articulating what they do in the context of the values. I do a weekly blog, which is almost always inspired by sporting themes, sporting history, sporting context. That was my one on 2020 vision, looking forward, looking back from 1964 to the 2020 games in Tokyo. More on that in a minute. The one I did last week was looking in the context of de Coubertin and internationalism at the time that I kept flicking backwards and forwards to the news and seeing what was going on in current affairs. Maybe we need a little bit more internationalism there as well, perhaps. I amplify that through weekly assembly themes, which are not exclusively but very frequently focused on key values that develop from sporting endeavour and sporting engagement. So whether it's Eric Liddell about personal choices and principles shaping what you set out to do as an individual, whether it's a new twist on a particular theme, picking up on the story of Peter Norman, the Australian athlete who stood by the protest there, and it was actually Tommy Smith and John Carlos who were his pallbearers at his funeral in 2006. Long-term friendship established through sporting context. Whether it's through the stories of inspiring individual athletes who challenge and overcome diversity. And what we then do is develop our own teaching materials from that. So it's not just me or a member of my senior team talking about this. The young people then have an opportunity to reflect on this during their tutorial periods, during the personal development programme, to think about what this means to them. What's their inspirational goal going to be? How are they going to plan to shape their futures? And we then also think about how we reward the way in which they live those values. I have something at school called the Wall of Fame. It's an inclusive approach to praise and reward. Yes, it's about excellence, it's about great academic performance, but what about the young person who's shown determination, that's shown an act of friendship, that's overcome a particular difficulty? And this is one of my favourite places in the school, where young people recommend one another for what they've done in the context of living the values. They celebrate what they do in that context. That's very reaffirming. And I'm delighted that we've had broader recognition of the way in which our young people are ambassadors for the values. Last year we became one of 30 Get Set Beacon schools. These were schools that were identified as focuses of leadership in the local community through those values as part of a 2012 legacy. That group of Year 9 and Year 10 students are tasked with going out into their local community, working with their local schools, specifically special schools, to encourage and engage them in sporting and other activity. More about them in a few moments. And I just come out of an Ofsted report. In fact, it was published just this morning as I was sitting in the audience. I'm still here, so it's okay. That was the one that goes back to 2012. They couldn't quite bring themselves to say a sporting values themed ambition for students. They couldn't quite get there, but they were close, and that continues to drive what we do. So all of that culture, I believe, creates a framework. If it's a vibrant community, you have vibrant teaching and learning and enrich the curriculum in that way. You can do that in a single subject area. That's an art project. Those are Year 7, 8 and 9 artists producing an Olympic gallery. They take a particular artistic genre, it could be the Hokusai wave, and they develop their painting around that. So it's a Munch-inspired Moscow scream when Said won in 1980, or it's a Picasso interpretation of Kelly Holmes's Moment of Celebration in Athens in 2004. Really impressive pieces of work. that the young people do. I particularly like that one. That's inspired by a French artist, and if you look very closely, the shading comes from newsprint. The newsprint is a Daily Telegraph report on the 2012 victory of Anna Watkins and Catherine Granger. Clever pieces of work. And obviously the young people then get to present their work to when we have iconic visitors to us, and they also become very nice little postcards and letters. So what I do every Friday, my staff tell me what students have performed. They get a nice little handwritten postcard, lands on the mat on a Saturday morning. Everybody feels happy about it, but you're reinforcing the values all the way through. Occasionally I write them to staff as well. We have other enrichment. We are one of 3 centres for Lewis Moody's Mad Dog Rugby Academy. Effectively our students doing a 4th A level around coaching and high performance in rugby. But of course the special thing about Lewis is he's the RFU's ambassador for World War One, and those international rugby players who lost their lives in the First World War. So we have a wider enrichment programme around that, which links to our history programme, and we also produced a video from our media studies students that looked at the life particularly of Reggie Poulton-Palmer, who was the closest international rugby player to our school, who lost his life in the First World War. So we try to work in some single subject areas, but we also try to work thematically, and I asked the Get Set group to actually do something to celebrate Sporting Heritage Day. It's not complete because the star of the show is somebody called Jonathan Joseph, JJ, who's actually playing for England at the moment in the Rugby World Cup, and he's a former student. But we did a little bit on our sporting heritage, A-level media studies students with the Get Set students.
Park House School is celebrating Sporting Heritage Day in 2019.
By taking a look at the past sporting moments and seeing how it affects the present.
I won't play too much of that because I'm acutely aware of time, but it runs for about 15 or 16 minutes and looks at the sporting heritage of our school and how we celebrate it and how it shapes learning today. And we're also developing a showpiece, a set of collections that actually students will be able to see. Second theme around promoting equality at 2 levels, whether that's disabilities or whether it's gender. So we've built Paralympic sports into the curriculum, and then we reflect more broadly on them. What impact does that have on young people's thinking? We build a personal development programme. Very, very privileged that Paralympic athletes like Danny Crates come into school. The first day that my Year 7s have, 205 young people experience it with a para-athlete talking about their own sporting heritage, their journey and how it inspires them. Then the media studies students make a video about it, and they track through the year how their attitudes to learning have been shaped by that inspirational first moment. Graham Edmonds, another absolutely magnificent advocate in that particular context, Paralympic swimming gold medalist from 2004 and 2008. And in terms of girls' sport, it's all about how we use visitors to the schools as role model. And Annabelle's story, Annabelle Chaffee, is I think the most remarkable one. Annabelle, there she is in Year 10, a very good all-round athlete. I managed to secure about £3,000 worth of sponsorship for her to go to an athlete development programme, high performance development programme at Bath. She went on to become the first ever state school student to compete in the British Bobsleigh Championships, which happened to be in Innsbruck, and then went on to compete in the Youth Winter Olympic Games as the world's #1 female athlete just 18 months later. And I, of course, then bring her back in to inspire the next generation of our students in that particular way. Obviously, people are particularly aware of some of the challenges that Alex and her family are presenting at the moment. She's been a wonderful friend for the school, again inspiring our girls. Heather Fisher, an amazing rugby player, England Sevens international, Olympic silver medalist, and also her story around overcoming alopecia as an ambassador there is inspirational. It does inspire the next generation. 2 young women in Year 10, 4 years ago, Caris and Cara, went on to become the heart of the best Sevens girls team in the country. That's England, by the way, not Wales, too. Those are my girls. They've gone on to play now as England under-20 internationals and have become some of the first salary players in the women's game. Here they are representing England under-20s. And I couldn't resist this here. I now have got 70 girls coming through the school in the cricket academy that's being developed from links through the primary school coming right the way through. So there's positive engagement in what we do around the values, and I think that helps to build a healthy community linking the physical and the mental. I invest another 1 hour of my PE staff's time. They all get 2 hours a week of PE. I invest a third hour in a wellbeing programme in years 7 and 8. Not many schools do that, and we've actually spread that across our primary partners. They build up the idea of a healthy living passport. There are 2 pictures of health and wellbeing. That's myself and Dr. Mike Loosemore, who is Team GB's Chief Medical Officer, seeing Nicola over there. He was a great mentor for Nicola, and she's been a great advocate. We do something called active movement. We were the first national pilot for active movement in the secondary sector. Dead easy, you stand up a bit more. You stand up rather than putting your hand up in lessons. You walk a lot. You create walking time between lessons. So I had that on my door. Signs around the schools by the seat saying please don't sit down, please don't take a seat. In the design technology we're not built to sit down, just reinforcing it. I'm a history teacher by background. Every time you talk about a popular movement, I don't know, Chartism or whatever it is, you say that's a movement, that leads to change, that moves things forward. QR codes around the school, the more that they walk, the more they scan them, the more house points they get. It's just reinforcing the whole concept of being active and the sporting culture that we have. And then we brought in active revision, encouraging young people to think about just having the pocket card, think about how you actually develop revision more actively and promote that active thinking all the way through. And I've appointed an active wellbeing coordinator who's involved in a number of initiatives. Please don't be put off by my legs. It's the first and only time that they're actually going to appear in this presentation. We have every year a race for life. It was inspired by the young woman in the middle, Tegan Doyle. She's now in the 6th form. She said she wanted a race for life to support her family. The lady who's behind Tegan is Liz Hawkins. Liz Hawkins has a social work and counselling background. She's also a passionate advocate of running. So, in addition to my support staff at school, traditional support staff, counsellors, pastoral support, I have an active wellbeing coordinator who liaises with young people and says, actually, will physical activity make a significant difference to your happiness, your security, your progress at school? And we have a programme for those young people that specifically focuses physical activity and active well-being to make the difference to their progress. I believe investing in that is actually more important than investing in another maths or English teacher, because happy, secure young people tend to make progress. And we've rolled that out into the community. That's our community and fun day. Old style fete, you know, we've got tombolas, we've got dog shows, but we have 500 people involved in family fun runs. It's just bringing the traditional together with a more outward facing and forward looking approach to our community focus as a hub for sporting activity, sporting heritage and well-being. Lastly then, last theme that I think we pick up on through that emphasis linked to the themes in this conference is global awareness and responsibility, and that's around international learning partnerships that are themed around the Olympic and Paralympic values. I never thought I'd go to Mongolia, but I have been. In 2010 we became part of the BBC World Olympic Dreams programme. You had to apply to link with a school that had produced or was looking to produce an Olympic champion. Bader Ergen was Mongolia's first gold medalist in 2008 flyweight at Beijing. He came from the remarkable school number 79, they're all numbered as in the Soviet system, in Ulaanbaatar. An absolute icon in that school. And we were able to make that connection, but I'm not very good at just leaving things there. I like to follow them through. So we went out to Mongolia and developed a mutual exchange system. We produced a series of videos, come on to those very briefly before the end, where we would share assembly themes. Students from the school visited us, we went over to the school, and we continue a fortnightly Skype to develop our understanding around those values in the concept of an international partnership. What we're now doing, of course, is moving on to Tokyo and possibly beyond. Because of our work around London 2012 and the successful work, we became a focus for the Education Committee at Tokyo, who came to visit us to see what we were doing. So we continued then to build links between schools themed around the journey to Japan. I got a grant from the Japan Foundation. I've introduced Japanese enrichment in school. There's the opportunity for young people to stay behind and have 2 hours worth of Japanese. All of our work around primary to secondary liaison is themed around Japanese. So our young people bring the primary school children in, and teach them to count a bit in Japanese, to teach them basic alphabets and so forth. And we started that with a video that we sent out for schools to respond to.
Konnichiwa, and welcome to Park House School. Here we try and adopt the 7 Olympic values in everyday life.
Yujo, friendship. Here at Park House School, we encourage friendship throughout extracurricular activities and sporting events, and with all the opportunities, you are bound to meet someone new.
Yushu, excellence. We show excellence at Park House School with opportunities around every corner. We have a gifted and talented programme to stretch and improve our learning.
Theatre, equality. Here at Park House School, we show equality by treating our peers and our teachers in the same way and are given the same opportunities even though our views may differ.
Kete, determination. At Park House School, we're determined to be the very best we can be.
We'll stop it at determination because that one's my son. He's terrific. So what we then did from that, the school responded and really wanted to engage with us. So we now do weekly Skypes with Shinagawa High School in Japan. It's great for obviously from the point of view of our language development. I have to say obviously their English is significantly better than ours. We started around Olympic role models and so forth. What we're now looking to do, we've produced a similar video for schools in France. And we're sharing that with a number of schools in Paris at the moment. I had the privilege of speaking at the Pierre de Coubertin committee in Paris last week to try and develop those links even further. We've got a programme called Vive la Valeur, which is looking at the centenary between 1924 and 2024, looking at some of the heroes of those games. Roger Ducret, for example, is the most bemedalled French athlete of all time. He's a fencer from 1924. But what we're doing is we're actually using materials in French in our personal development programme, our tutorial programme. So the youngsters are having to read these and look at these materials in French to develop their language skills. So, Whistle Stop Tour, I hope there's a little bit of interest there around how you can develop well-being based upon sporting heritage in schools, and hopefully some thoughts about how in your respective roles you can engage with the local education community. Thank you very much.